Archiving started.
All right, welcome to Women in Science and Engineering. Thank you all for coming today. Women in Science and Engineering here at Eastern Florida State College is a program to support students pursuing careers in science, technology, engineering, and math, so STEM careers. It is not just for women, it is for all students, free to you as ESSC students. We offer seminar series with guest experts like the one you are attending today, workshops on careers and resume building like we had last Thursday, information about graduate schools, networking for future employment, networking for future schools. If you visit our website, we have recorded lectures from all of our previous seminars that you can view, as well as contact information for lots and lots of mentors in STEM career fields for you to contact, ask them questions. That's what they're there for. We also do undergraduate research. If you're interested in any of these things, contact myself. I'm Dr. Ashley Spring. I teach biology here at the Melbourne campus, as well as our Associate Provost, Dr. Mary Ross-Lanowski. We have more events coming up in the fall semester. Of course, this is our last event for the spring 2014 semester. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Jody Palmer, who's joining us from the Brevard Zoo. Jody is the Oyster Restoration Coordinator. Will be telling us about how she got to her position, her recommendations for careers in STEM fields, as well as what are we going to do about the Indian River Lagoon. Without further ado, let's welcome Jody. Hey, how are you guys doing today? Everybody good? Good. All right, well, I'm so excited to be here today. I was just telling Dr. Spring, this is actually really strange for me to talk some about myself. I usually talk about my project all the time. So we're going to kind of go through this little journey together this afternoon where we're going to talk a little bit about me, how I got to this position that I'm in, and then we'll talk about the projects that I manage over at Brevard Zoo. So I'm going to try to make this kind of fun for you guys. I love self-deprecating humor, so I'll just make fun of myself. You laugh at me, we're going to get along really great, okay? So I wanted to title this, The World is Your Oyster. The projects that I manage over at Brevard Zoo are oyster restoration projects. So this is going to be kind of me telling you guys how I got where I am, and hopefully something will be sparked to you, and it will help you in your choices that you're making as you're going through and trying to decide what is it that you want to be when you grow up. Because I know I'm personally still working on that particular choice. So I wanted to start out with some fun books. So the story of my life. All right. So I think Dr. Seuss is fantastic. I have a 4-year-old son, and when you read Dr. Seuss books, it kind of puts everything in perspective. It's like sometimes you just have to simplify. So growing up, I knew I always wanted to have something to do with the water. I loved fish. I loved swimming. My parents actually have this video of me crawling off a diving board, and then I hit the water and then just took off like a fish. So, marine biology has always been a huge part of my life, and I knew I wanted to do something with that, but I wasn't exactly sure what. Somehow now I found myself at a position where I'm at a zoo. I'm working at Brevard Zoo. I've got the best job ever, I tend to think. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. You can be the judge of it. And people are always like, you're going to run that zoo one day. So I thought that book might be appropriate to throw in here. And then, the places you'll go. And this book is just so much fun. If you haven't read it lately, highly recommended. I read it at my high school graduation, and it's just like the most precious book, I think. And so that's kind of like my past, my present, and my future. So, in the story of my life. All right, so where this started, Benicia, California, where I was born. I actually went out to visit California a couple years ago to see a friend, and I was like, oh, I belong here. I love California. This is the most fantastic place. My parents actually my middle name is Benicia, so I kind of like to joke because that's where we lived at the time. So I'm Jody Benicia. So I always like to joke. I'm like, oh, that would be really funny if we lived in Palm Bay and they're like Jody Palm Bay Palmer. That'd be fantastic. But and then has anybody ever heard of this book, Sam the Sea Cow? Okay, so this is the book that changed my life. This started it all. 5th grade, Laura Barecki, hanging out, slumber party. She pulls this book out, and I read it, and my life was forever changed. I was like, I've got to know more about these sea cows. So then the quest for, like, all things manatee began, and now, you know, I found myself destination sunny Florida. So it's been a while. It took me a long time to get there. There was a couple detours along the way, but that's life. That's what happens. So here's how that happened. I was up in Maryland. Anybody in here from Maryland? Okay, I have to tell you, when I moved down here to go to Florida Tech, everybody was from Maryland. I thought I was like so cool because I was like, oh, I'm going to Florida. It's going to be fantastic. So I'm walking through the parking lot of Florida Tech and I'm like, Maryland. Like every car in the parking lot of Florida Tech from Maryland. I was like, what? But so there was a little detour along the way. And this is kind of where I'm going to hop on a little soapbox for just a second, and I want to talk to you guys about this in particular. My parents wanted me to go to college in Texas. All right, they said Texas A&M at Corpus Christi. That's where you need to go. That's where your aunt lives. That's where your grandmother lives. Your cousin's in a sorority there. You need to go down there. Be Tri Delta. This is like our path for you. So I was like, okay, I need to make my family happy. So it's what I did. I packed my bags. I went to Texas A&M at Corpus Christi. Not the best semester of my life. Has anybody else had that semester that you just wish you could just completely forget? All right, we got one honest person in the room. Yes. So that was my semester there. Met a boy, thought I was in love, moved to Oklahoma. Who moved to Oklahoma? This girl. So ended up in Oklahoma, which has nothing to do with sunny Florida. If anybody needs a geography lesson here. And I said, you know what, this is just not for me. And I had to just kind of stop and pull it all back together. So I went back to Maryland. I was going to a community college there. I got my grades pulled up. I had a 4.0. Started applying to places. Got a high GPA scholarship to Florida Tech, and ended up moving down here. So that's my path. And I guess I wanted to tell you guys that story because I just want for you to know that sometimes you don't get directly exactly to where you want to go. Sometimes you have to hit a couple road bumps. You have to take a couple detours, and that's exactly what I had to do. But the timing of it actually worked out perfect. As I got down here, I was at Florida Tech. Had a pretty fantastic time there, and I found myself at Brevard Zoo. I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about how I got there in just a second, but I want to tell you a little bit about the zoo. It's kind of my other home. I've been there for 9 years now. It is a community-built zoo, which means that we actually had volunteers come in and physically build our zoo by hand in a lot of areas. So you can, this is our 20th birthday, so you might see some signs around, happy birthday to zoo. So we're having a big celebration. It is a private, not-for-profit organization. So a lot of times people think it's county-funded or we get tax dollars. It doesn't work that way. We're all based on our ticket sales, donations, grants, things like that. And we have approximately 400,000 annual visitors. So that's your little crash course on the zoo, in case you're wondering. Our mission statement is wildlife conservation through education and participation. And I know that's kind of a mouthful, but when you really break it down, I absolutely love our mission statement. I couldn't write a more perfect mission statement for the project that I'm going to tell you guys about today, because it's really just bringing the community in, educating them, and then having them do hands-on participation for conservation. And I think that's pretty fantastic. All right, so the zoo. How did I get to the zoo? What am I doing there? So it started with work study, which is it's like a federal, federal aid assistant type program. So I go to the work study office at Florida Tech, and I'm like, I want to work at a zoo. My friend said that she's doing work study at the zoo. So she pulls out this binder, which is like 20 feet high, and just slams it down on the table and flips through. And she's like, we don't have anything in here that's for the zoo. And I was like, you've got to. My friend just said that she's doing work study there. So it took a couple weeks, but finally we got through the 20-foot binder, and we found at the back of it that there actually was a page for Brevard Zoo. And so I started my work study hours there. Now, as you can tell, kind of like high energy, I talk fast and move fast, and kind of all over the place. Well, believe it or not, I actually rushed through my hours for work study, and they ran up pretty quickly because I was always wanting to work and always wanting to do things. So about that time, they actually had a part-time position open up. So they just said, we really want you to apply for it. I interviewed. They gave it to me right there at the end of the interview, and I was then officially a part-time educator at Brevard Zoo. And at the time, I really didn't even know what that meant. I don't even know what it meant to be an educator, but I just went in, and I learned about teaching all these programs. So I would teach kids from, like, sitting on their little carpet squares and letting them, see chinchillas and reptiles and stuff, all the way up through teaching high school. And I was like, I kind of like this. This is fun. I've got this enthusiasm. I want to, teach other people about science. And I started to find this niche that I never even knew that was something that I enjoyed doing. But then I was watching all my friends, and they were animal keepers, and they're going in with the capybaras, and they're getting to pet them and rub on their backs and teaching them how to sit and put their paw out. And I was like, I want to shovel giraffe stuff too. So I found myself as a part-time swing keeper. And what that means is when people would go away on vacation, I would get to come in and cover their shift. So we have different animals in different areas at the zoo. And most keepers are assigned to a particular area. So if they work Wild Florida, they work with the Wild Florida animals every day. Well, for me, I got to come in and cover all the animals on all the different days. And that was like the most fun thing ever. No 2 days was ever the same. And that was really fun for a little while. And then I was like, no, I don't think I like shoveling all this mess all the time. I want to do something with my life. So about that time, I started talking to the education department again. And they said, oh, we've got these other positions that involve lagoon quest. Is anybody in here familiar with Lagoon Quest? Okay, a couple of hands. 4th grade program. Take children out into the Indian River Lagoon, have them do seine netting, fish identification, teach them about ecosystems and functions and things. And I was like, this is perfect. I love it. I found my home. So I got to do that educating thing. I got to be in the lagoon. I got to, do all the things that I love to do, and that was really fun, and I really enjoyed it. So then they said, well, we're going to open this new Paws On exhibit. And I don't know if anybody's been to the zoo lately, but this was a few years ago. And we had this children's interactive play area for to teach kids about the lagoon, kind of get them excited about being outside, playing in nature. So I was actually the supervisor over that for a little while. I got to help with the build and the design of it. And once again, I started learning things that I never even knew I was passionate about. So I was getting to, buy these stuffed animals and actually literally gut them, pull the stuffing out. We put little organs in so that the kids could play pretend doctor and have their little stethoscopes and operate on animals. And I was watching the impact that it was making on the kids, and I was like, this is really fantastic. I love what I'm doing. And just getting to do that portion of educating that I never realized I was over the top passionate about. So I did that for a little while, and then I had my son. And I said, man, I really want to be at home with him a little bit more. I started to realize, I wanted to be a mom, not just an employee. And so that was at the time that they wanted to make the oyster restoration project a little bit bigger. Now, I had helped bring this to the zoo from the Nature Conservancy, who had been the primary partner on it. And what I mean by that is we would help on occasion, we would help drill shells for them when they needed it. We were just kind of like their backup plan. And they wanted to actually start to focus on work out in the Gulf of Mexico. So going from a backup plan to the project lead in about a 1.5 year transition was actually a really, really big deal because they had established this project, which I'm going to tell you guys a little bit more about in a second. But so the zoo basically needed somebody to manage that project. And at the time, I was thinking, I'm trying to make my life easier. But then when we took on this project, and it absolutely just exploded. So that's just kind of the story of my 9 years at the zoo. But I think I found my home. But I guess what I wanted to tell you guys with that is along the way, I've learned so much. And I always have a volunteer that says to me, she's like, work smarter, not harder, Jody, because I'm one of those people that will just go out and find the hardest way to do things and exhaust myself beyond exhaustion. And then I've got people that are like, that's not how you should do it. You should do it this way and do it smarter. So this is where I want to give you guys some tips, okay? So just some little things that you might not have ever even considered, but that can actually make giant, giant strides in your career. Grades are important. We all know that. We all want to get good grades, right? That's fantastic. However, I want for you guys to think about things that you might not have ever thought about before. I know you're busy and I know you got stuff going on, but if you go to a thing like a conference, or if you go to something like a symposium, and you meet people there, it's going to change your life. Don't just go and sit in the back row and listen. Go and present. Make a poster. Talk about what you're doing. Talk about the things that you're involved with. Get your name out there. I've had so many stories of me walking through conferences and maybe holding the door open for somebody, and they catch a glimpse of my name badge. And then that turns into a conversation. And then we know somebody that is the same person. And then they have somebody who's looking for a job. And it just so happens that I'm hiring. And then we make this connection. And there is probably a way with every single person in this room that there would be some kind of connection that you never realize. And that doesn't happen until you actually start that conversation. And those conversations don't happen on their own. So I just want to really, really encourage you guys to get plugged in, because I promise you there's so much going on out there that can change your life that you don't even know about it's happening. As I can tell you, it took me a long time to get where I am, but so much of that is just because of the way that I just got really engaged in different clubs and activities. I had to go through college on scholarships. There's grants out there. There's just tons of opportunities that a lot of people don't realize. But when you start to look for them, you start to realize that there's just this whole world out there that you didn't know about. Here's another thing, volunteering. Many of the employees that we hire at the zoo are actually people that go through our volunteer program. So if you're somewhere and you volunteer and then they have a job opening, who do you think they're going to think about first? The person that comes in day after day, clocks in, doesn't get paid for it, is there on time, is there with a smile. Whenever it comes time to hire somebody, you're going to be the first person on their radar. Not just that, but if it's not with that particular organization, when you can tell another organization that you have volunteered somewhere, that is huge. It is gigantic. People love that other people are doing that. So just think about that as you guys are kind of making choices. And I'll even give you an opportunity to volunteer because we need you. So no excuses. But I highly recommend the work study. Obviously, it definitely changed my life. And how that works is basically that the zoo picked up a small portion, and then the college picked up a small portion. And then I got paid a really, really small portion, but it's okay because it got me to the place where I am, and I really appreciate the opportunity for that. So this is, I guess what my point is with this picture is that it really is, it's about who you know. So where I said that about going to a conference, I was actually in Des Moines at a conference, and I have to tell you this story. I remember when I heard about it, I was like, seriously, you're going to send me to a conference in Des Moines? Like, there's conferences in Vegas, and there's conferences in Los Angeles, and you're going to send me to Des Moines? It changed my life. Because I met so many fantastic people at this particular conference. Well, I met Barnaby. He's pretty great. This is my friend Amy. We work together at the zoo. But, kind of a funny story about this. They were doing these little visits around that particular zoo. And they had these, interactions that you could go to. And nobody had signed up for the interaction to go and meet Barnaby. And so they were really trying to, push people into it. Somebody go see Barnaby. So we go and meet him. And he's like this, I don't even remember. He's like 78-year-old tortoise or something. And he's like the zoo ambassador there. But at that particular interaction, I met this girl who's doing conservation work in Madagascar, and she's changing the world. They're actually building a school in Madagascar out of trash. So they've got people going around and picking up the trash, stuffing all the trash into these plastic bottles, building this school out of these bottles, built kind of inverted like so, and then boxing it in with concrete. And it's they're calling it the Dream School, and I mean they're just changing lives in Madagascar. And I got to meet this girl. She's like, "Come to Madagascar, help us build this school." So it's just I was like, "I want to go to that tortoise thing," and then I get there and I meet Barnaby, and she's obviously fantastic. I mean, look, and beautiful grass, and she's so cute. Okay, but anyway, I just want to let you know that don't pass up those opportunities, okay? Because they're definitely the things that are going to change your life. Now, believe it or not, I know I like to talk, and I know I talk fast, but this is going to be the most difficult slide for me to talk about. Like I told you, I'm not very good at talking about myself. So I want to tell you guys, these are the accolades that have somehow encountered me over the last year, and I like to say they're my blessing and my curse. I'm so thankful for all of them, don't get me wrong, but it's I don't know, I probably wouldn't even mention these, but I have a coworker who's like, "Jody, you need to tell people these things because they're actually really fantastic." But so Field and Stream actually called last year, and they're like, "We hear about what you're doing in the lagoon. We hear about the work you're doing. We want to recognize you as a hero of conservation." What? Me? Okay, sure. So I'm in this magazine next to all these people that are getting recommended for or getting recognized for teaching kids how to fish and changing lives and stuff, and they put me in there. And I thought that was just really special. Last year, Disney recognized 13 people as heroes of conservation, and they picked me and my oyster team as one of those. And that was, I don't know, it was just huge that people are starting to think hey, these people over at the zoo, they're up to something. Just a couple weeks ago, we won the Keep Brevard Beautiful Nonprofit Sustainability Award for the oyster work that we're doing. So that was just some really exciting things that have happened just due to the work that I'm involved in, which I'm now going to talk to you guys about and stop talking about myself because that's making me nervous. So I lead two of what, and I've yet to do the research on it, but I think that they're two of some of the largest restoration efforts in the nation right now, and somehow I'm managing both of them. Yeah, I'm kind of out of my mind, and I don't even drink coffee. It's kind of crazy. Woo! So who has made an oyster mat? All right, I see a couple hands. All right, so there are two projects. One is oyster mat. It's a 1/4 meter square, and we're making these mats, and they go to Volusia County, so in the northernmost part of the Indian River Lagoon. And we have worked with over 36,000 volunteers with this project, and we partner with University of Central Florida on it.
And we've been partnered with it since around 2011. That was when I told you guys that I transitioned over into that new position. And then the other project that I manage is a new project. You might have heard about it if you have any idea what's going on with the lagoon right now, but it's an oyster gardening project. And what we're doing is working with Brevard County residents that live along the Indian River Lagoon to do oyster gardening, and I'll tell you guys more about that. But so those are my two babies right now. First, we're going to talk about the Oyster Map project. So these are the partners that you see listed here, and these are the people that give us the time and the money and the equipment in order to accomplish the great things that we're accomplishing. And this kind of goes back to what I was telling you guys earlier. Like, these are the people that we set up these partnerships with that are making it that all of this is possible. So if I was just kind of like this really quiet person that never wanted to talk to anybody, or maybe just somebody that was like really mean to people, like none of these partnerships would happen, okay? So these are the people that sign my paycheck, because all of the projects that we do is all done on grants, okay? So the zoo doesn't pay any money towards making these projects happen. So I have to go out and find the grants, write the grant, do the work that I promise I'm going to do, and then I have to report back to them and say, hey, we spent your money really fantastically, and this is why. So the reason why we have these partnerships is because we have to go out and we have to really, really work to establish those. That's something I want for you guys to kind of think about as you go out into the career field, that it is always about building around you and making these connections. All right, so the Oyster Map project, basically, the Indian River Lagoon is 156 miles long. We are doing work in the northernmost portion where you see that big red circle. It's up in Volusia County. Do we have any surfers in the room? Anybody likes to go up and surf in New Smyrna Beach? Yeah, that's the place for it. Lots of sharks up there, too, though. Be careful. But it is the most biologically diverse estuary in the United States, and it is right here in our backyard. So I want for you guys to realize that we have got this gem in our backyard. A lot of people just don't even know where it is. When you go to the beach, you go over the causeway. When you go over the causeway, you're over the Indian River Lagoon. So you've all probably been there many, many times. You'd be amazed at how many people just don't even know what it is, though. But so we've got more plants and animal species living in this one particular body of water than in any other body of water in the continental United States, and it's in our backyard. Now, unfortunately, it is in a state of crisis right now because we have done a little bit of destruction to it, and so we're in a process with the community trying to turn this around. Now, the Oyster Map project has been going on for many years, and I'm very proud to say that it's doing very, very well up there, and I'll give you guys some of the stats here in a second. But let's talk a little bit about oysters. They are a keystone species. What that means is that they play a critical role in keeping a balanced ecosystem. We take them away, things suffer. That's the best way to say it. So without them, we're going to have things that don't have a home, don't have anything to eat. We're going to have unfiltered water. So we want to make sure and keep these guys around because they're really, really important for to keep this balanced ecosystem. Who likes to eat oysters? All right, now I'm going to get you guys interested. All right, I actually have people that have volunteered with my project before that say, I'm only here to volunteer because I want to offset the amount of oysters that I actually consume. I'm like, I don't care what you're here for. I'm just glad you're here. Just stay. But they provide a habitat. So they provide habitat globally for approximately 300 different species can be found in an oyster reef taking up residence. That's a lot of animals that want to live in all these little nooks and crannies. Great place to go in at night, especially for the little juvenile fish and invertebrates. They prevent erosion. Obviously, erosion is the washing away of our shoreline. So what happens is where you find one oyster, you're going to find a lot of them. They're very gregarious. They like to hang out with all their oyster friends. So you're going to find them in these clumps, which are going to be very often near a shoreline. And so what happens is the wave energy has to actually come up and go through all those layers of oysters before it gets to the shore. By the time it gets there, that wave's going to be a lot smaller and a lot less angry, and it's going to be pulling a lot less sediments away with it. So they help to prevent erosion. The last thing that they do is my personal favorite, is that they are filter feeders. So I'm glad you guys are all sitting down because this is really big. One oyster, about this size as an adult, can actually filter 2 gallons of water per hour. So approximately 50 gallons of water per day per oyster. Can you imagine being this large and filtering 50 gallons of water every day of your life? 50 gallons. That's just what they do. They don't move. They're sessile. They stay in one place. They're not like scallops that kind of hop around and do all this craziness. They actually just stay in one place. They're bivalves, so they just kind of pop open a little bit, and then the water goes through the inside. Now, they are living animals, so the water's going to come in That's going to go across the gills, which is going to pull the oxygen out of the water. It's going to go through the mantle, which is going to help to build it a nice, sturdy, strong shell. And your clean water is going to be pushed back out. So it's pretty fantastic. If you're ever out by an oyster reef, you can actually see them kind of like squirting water into the air. If you're a big oyster nerd like me, you think that's really fun. You guys probably think it's kind of lame, but trust me, it's pretty great. So they're out there filtering the water. They're doing it for us, but they need a home. So this is how they work. A little oyster life cycle for you guys. So the gametes are released into the water. The male and the female release the sperm and egg. They join in the water and make this little fertilized egg. Now this guy's going to turn into a larvae. And this larvae is going to be floating around the water for a couple weeks at a time. It can actually float for a couple miles. It's searching for the perfect real estate. Once it's settled somewhere, it's going to settle at this place, and it's going to live there for its entire life. Now, an oyster can live to be 20 years old. So it's a pretty big deal once it has to find this one place that it's going to live its entire life. So it's going to attach onto another oyster shell or a tire or a piece of sand, which is just going to roll away. But wherever it attaches to, that's where it's stuck, okay? So at that point of attachment, it is now got a new name, very scientific, very official. It is called a spat. All right, so the spat is then going to grow. It's going to start to filter, and then it's going to grow nice and big, and it's going to become about this large, like I said, as an adult, and that's at around 2 years of age. All right, so now that you guys are all oyster experts and you all love oysters, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about how you can get involved in some of these projects. Now, the oysters have gone away. 85% of the world's oysters have been depleted. The Nature Conservancy did a study, and they found that number to be 85%. Now, it's a pretty astonishing rate that we're losing these guys. And this is just a handful of reasons why. In the Indian River Lagoon, I can't stand up here and say exactly I know what caused the loss of all of our oysters, but I can go over some slides with you guys in a second that are going to kind of like blow your mind on how it used to be and how it is now. And we do have some pretty good theories on what happened to that population. But in Mosquito Lagoon, which is the northernmost portion of the Indian River Lagoon, we have these dead margins, is what we call them. And basically, they are these crescent-shaped piles of dead shells. So all these guys that are white and bleached out, those are dead shells. And so what we want to do is we want to come in and we want to level those out, even with low tide. So we're going to rake them out, because this used to be a healthy, thriving oyster reef, by the way. And what happened was, we love boating, by the way. We love boating. But sometimes when you have a shallow body of water and you have a boat going through at a high rate, what it does is it creates these waves that come off the back, and those waves will actually be fantastic for skiing on. But if you're a little oyster, it's kind of scary when they come grab you and throw you up onto this pile and cause you to just sort of dry out in the sun. They don't have the little legs or anything that can kind of help them to walk back down. They get up on that pile, they're stuck, they dry out. That's what they do. So we come in, we level those out, and then we lay down these oyster mats, which many of you have probably built. If you haven't, tons of opportunities to build them around the community. 36 shells are attached to a mat. Like I said, it's a 1/4 meter squared, about this large. So we take all these mats, we connect them at the corners using concrete sprinkler donuts, and then we build a restored reef with them. So here's some volunteers hard at work out there. And different sizes reefs are built depending on the size that it needs to be restored. So we only go out and do restoration at places that there used to be healthy oyster reefs. We don't just go out and build reefs wherever we feel like it. It's just where there used to be healthy reefs that need to be fixed. So we take volunteers after that. If anybody's around in the summer and wants to just come out and work really, really hard on a really, really hot day, I'm your girl. I'll show you exactly what we do. It's fantastic fun. No, it really is fun. And, you know, at the end of the day, when you stop and you look around and you're like, wow, this used to be a big pile of dead nothing, and now it's a pile of, you know, healthy habitat. It's really kind of life-changing. So this is a restored reef that used to be a dead margin, and these are all healthy oysters growing in here. They don't look healthy, but that is actually a muddy oyster is a healthy oyster. So you go and you can't even see where the mats are anymore because it's all just growing together in one large healthy reef. So here is our location. We have 63 restored reefs that we've been working on since 2007. Some of them are just a couple hundred mats large. Some of the largest is like 2,498 oyster mats large. So now we go out and do monitoring. This is a research-based project. This isn't like, hey, let's just build some reefs and put this stuff out there and then never check on it again. We actually want to go out and do annual monitoring, and we find that approximately 93 baby oysters are going to have taken up residence on an oyster mat after 1 year. So can you imagine, like, you sit in a desk today, you build a mat, I take it out there this summer, I put it out to build a reef. I go back and check on it between like 9 and 10 months later, and it's already a home to almost 100 baby oysters. Like, what? How else can you actually like change the world more in like a 20-minute time span? I don't know. I just tend to think that's pretty fantastic. So volunteers are the reason that this is all possible. For this particular project, it's me, and I have one person on staff that works on it with me. And University of Central Florida has some grad students, and they have one research biologist, and that's it for paid staff. Everybody else is volunteers, which leads me to our accomplishments of over 35,555 volunteers. That number's changing every day because we're always doing community outreach work for that. We've restored 1.77 acres. We've done that with 35,678 oyster mats. That number's going to go up by about 5,000 this summer when we go out and put them back out, or put them out in the lagoon. And that means that we've put over 4.1 million oysters into the Indian River Lagoon through the community's help. So that is what kept me busy for many, many years. And then rumor got out that the Brevard Zoo was actually pretty decent at this oyster restoration thing. So we were approached by Brevard County, and they said, hey, we hear you guys know about oyster restoration. What do you think about doing something here in Brevard County? Now, for me, doing community outreach on a daily basis to people who are dedicating hours and hours and hours of their life to doing oyster restoration, for me to take all their mats up to Volusia County and build reefs there, I had so many people saying, why aren't we doing work right here in Brevard County? And I kind of ran out of reasons, and I was like, no, you're pretty right. We really should be. So when we were approached by the county, and they said, why don't we work on oyster restoration here in the county together, we were like, we couldn't say yes fast enough. So then we developed a team, and these are the people that are involved. You guys don't even know it, but you're involved. So you don't even know it. You're already saving the world. But if you guys are involved with the environmental club, I know Teddy back there, he has probably cut, I don't know, maybe like 12,000 habitats for us by hand, by himself. Just kidding. Well, probably not. But this project is all community-based as well. You're going to see a lot of similarities with this project as you saw with the last one that I just talked about. But do keep in mind that it is a completely different project. It has different goals, different methodologies, different partners are working on it. Sorry, I kind of crunched up the environmental club in there, but it is the environmental club that is working with us on this project. So these are the partners. And these are all of our locations of oyster gardeners. And what that means is every dot that you see on here has got an oyster habitat living off of its dock, which is a personal residence. We have almost 400 gardeners spread out through Brevard County's portion of the Indian River Lagoon. And can I please tell you that this project was actually sort of an idea in November. Funding came through in December. Work started in January, and we already have almost 400 people in the lagoon in Brevard County that are actively working to save our lagoon. Like, it gives me chills, and it makes me exhausted at the same time when I think about how far this project has come in such a short amount of time. So just to tell you guys where all of this nonsense started is back in the day, around 1986, Brevard harvested 3% of the state's oysters came out of here. Now less than 0.1% are coming out of Brevard County. So you can kind of see what happened. We had this huge boom in '86. It was like almost like a mini gold rush. Like, there was just so many people came in from all over the United States, probably all over the world, and everybody heard about our healthy oyster and clam population. And what happened is people just came in and they just overharvested. And it's just like anything, even kind of like overfishing. If you do not allow a population to sustain itself, then obviously it's never going to be able to just kind of catch its breath and continue on. So when people came in and they took so many of them away, it was just never really able to make it back. Now, we've had a couple little ebbs and flows where it was trying to pick up, and maybe there would be a lot more larvae, and then all of a sudden, but since kind of the mid-90s, it's pretty much been a flat line, and the population's just not able to have enough gametes into the water to produce enough babies to get old enough to be able to reproduce themselves, and it's just kind of this deadly cycle. So we're kind of hoping this project might at least not only raise some awareness, but also bring some of the oysters back into the lagoon to help to clean up the water, to make it a place that more of these bivalves that are filter feeding want to live again. And then maybe one day we'll worry about getting to a point where we have to do shellfish management and hopefully not overharvest it again. So it's a long, long road, but that's just basically a little history on that. So we've kind of gone over this, but just so you guys know about this particular project, what we're doing is we're working with residents. We are getting them, and now that you guys all know what SPAT is, we're giving them oyster shells that have spat already attached to it. So we're going down to a hatchery in Florida Oceanographic Society down in Stewart, and we're getting them to basically make little baby oysters for us, attach them to oyster shells, give us those shells, and then we distribute them to all of our residents that live along the lagoon, and the residents are growing the oysters for us. Now, what this is going to teach us is the survivability of oysters in the lagoon. And in the meantime, we're filtering people's water right there in their, not we, but the oysters are filtering the water right there in the people's backyard. So the goal is to have 1 million oysters in the lagoon. We are somewhere around halfway there right now, which is really, really exciting. Got a long road ahead of us, but once again, it's one of those community-based projects. So we do this with volunteers. So whenever we get these grant dollars, essentially we say, hey, you're going to hire 1 or 2 people, and we're going to bring on a team of, however many thousand volunteers. So essentially when people do that, they might pay us to hire 2 people, but it's really like they're hiring like 5,002 people because we have like 5,000 volunteers that will work on it. So that's why community-based projects are so, so important. It's because it really helps to stretch the dollar. And you're going to find that a lot in science these days because obviously, grant funding and stuff is really tight. So anytime that you can plug volunteers in, it's a good thing to do. Now, the Indian River Lagoon is, as I told you how special it is, but Brevard County actually makes up 71% of that. So we have a giant responsibility here in Brevard County to help with this since we are 71% of the Indian River Lagoon. And this project is just one of many portions that we're trying to bring together to help with the lagoon because these oysters aren't going to do it alone. There's got to be other things going on. There's got to be a reduction of the pesticides and the fertilizers and the things that are going into the lagoon. You're probably hearing a lot of buzz about that right now. The removal of this detrimental muck. Nothing can grow through it. Nothing can grow down below it to get to the seagrass to allow for it to grow. So we've got this just thick layer of muck that's just sitting there. In low flow areas, that water's not able to be pushed out to be recirculated. So we might have to go in and do some dredging in those areas. So there's big buzz about that right now to try to go in and get the dollars to do that. Research. Obviously, all of this has to be research-based. You have to have smart science. You can't just go in and just put millions of dollars of oysters somewhere and be like, well, hope to live. I don't know. There goes some tax dollars. That's not how this works. You have to do smart science. You have to go in with a small amount of money. You have to find out where these guys are going to live, and then those are the areas that you want to focus on to go in and put the dollars towards restoration, which is kind of what this is exactly what this oyster project is doing. At the end of it, we are going to have a map of the Indian River Lagoon that tells us healthy places for oysters to live because we're going to know that data based on people's survivability of the oysters that we give them to grow off their docks. So there's some rules for our gardeners. We tell them they've got to have the habitat suspended. They can't hit the pilings. There's got to be, all of this nonsense. They have to go out every week and they have to clean them and they have to weigh them and stuff. But you guys would be amazed. Every day, I'm just baffled at how excited people are about this. Does anybody know anybody that's doing an oyster gardening thing? Anybody? Okay, I got a couple hands. Yeah. It's actually really crazy. Everywhere you go, you meet somebody that's like, oh yeah, I've heard about that, or oh yeah, I have an oyster garden myself. And these people are crazy. We go out to their house, and they're naming these oysters that are living on their dock, and they're telling them that the oyster doctor's coming to see them. And no, they're just excited, and that's what we want. That's how this kind of thing works, is because people just get excited and spread the word. So we've got, like I said, we've got just selfless dedication to this. Selfish, say that 5 times fast, would you? And so we've got these dedicated volunteers that are just, so attached to the project and that are out there doing this data entry, this data collection. They're cleaning the habitats for biofouling. They're doing the maintenance. And so they're just, it's pretty great. So we always tell our volunteers, there's a lot that goes into this, so don't go out and eat your oysters once they get big enough. What we're hoping to do is take all of the oysters at the end of this and bring all of the gardeners together and do a couple different sites, possibly one, maybe multiple sites, where we actually bring all the oysters together, put them all together, and then give those people new spat on shelf so that the project can continue. And it turns out that we did just receive a little bit of funding that we should be able to continue the project in the future. So we're really excited about that. There's going to be some growth going on where we're going to be able to do some more living shoreline work. We're hoping to do a couple miles, basically, of living shoreline work. And what I mean when I say living shoreline is where we're taking oysters and we're combining them with things like mangroves, which are the trees. I don't know if everybody in here is science-based, but they're the trees that have the big prop roots that come down and kind of call us the walking tree. And the mangrove serves a fantastic habitat for tons and tons of animals. So in combination with oysters and mangroves, we take the spartina, which is a quickly growing marsh grass, and we put them all together. And they actually work as this really great combination when you put the three of them together because they protect one another, and it helps to prevent erosion, provide us a fantastic habitat. So you might see some places around the community where a lot of this is going on, and it's just gonna, it's gonna result in cleaner water and less eroded areas and in a cleaner lagoon, which, I think it's pretty fantastic. It's worth saving. So we crunched a couple numbers, and we found that if we work with 1,000 gardeners, which is our goal for this year, and each one of them has oysters that are filtering 50 gallons of water per day, and we give them approximately 1,000 oysters, that would result in 50,000 gallons of filtered water a day. And when you combine everybody, that's 18 billion gallons of filtered water per day, just with this one project that this second project that I just told you about. And if you really stop and break that number down, how can an individual waterfront property owner be more responsible for helping the lagoon so much? So we're just really excited about this project. We are looking for additional people to get involved with it because we can't do it without the community, as I told you guys. So it's something to think about if you want to help. And with that, I would love to take any questions anybody has. Oh, that's my son. Isn't he cute? Yes. So that is it. Thank you. Any questions?
So contact you if we want to get involved?
Yeah. The environmental club is, and if you want to have any opportunities coming up that you want to tell people about, Teddy, but the environmental club here is doing a lot of work. So you can get in touch with me or.
You're in communication with the South Brevard Sanctuary and Mellor Beach, right?
South Brevard Sanctuary.
Or the
Marine Resource Council?
It's the place down in Mellor Beach where I volunteered.
Oh, Barrier Island Sanctuary down on the beach? Yeah. They've hosted many of our workshops. We also do oyster mat making there. So yeah, we do a lot of different, they host us for a lot of our different events and activities. So if you guys are interested in coming out making some oyster mats, you can see that schedule at brevardszoo.org. And yeah, it's a great place. Good interpretive stuff out there. Great signs and stuff. Yeah. Come on. Any other questions? They're too easy on me.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So in Volusia County, you're not using stat, you're just putting out shells, versus in Brevard County, there appears to be a need to use hatchery stat. Why is that?
That's a great question. Volusia County has really healthy oyster populations. The larvae just needs a place to attach. So down here, we don't have that. We don't have a healthy oyster population. If you go out pretty much anywhere in Brevard County and look around the water, you're going to see that you don't really see a lot of oysters just naturally out there on their own. So we can't just, like we always get these calls and people are like, hey, come hang oyster mats off my dock in Brevard County. Well, I can make oyster mats and hang them off your dock all day long, but unless there's males and females producing the gametes that are going to come and attach to your oyster mats off your dock, it's not going to do any good. It's just going to be a place for seagrasses and algae and stuff to stick onto. But in Volusia County, they have a really healthy oyster population. They have tons of oyster larvae, which is floating around just looking for a home. So up here, we had to basically bring it in just to find out if it will survive, which based on our first initial set of data, which is a small amount, we only went to 30 site visits, but everybody's oysters are alive and they are doing well. So we don't want to speak too soon. We want to wait until we get through a couple of these, heavy summer rains, maybe even a hurricane, see if they do okay. If they make it through that, then that's going to tell us that we can have oysters surviving here in Brevard County, which is really fantastic because that's data that nobody has been able to provide before. So that's information that we're really excited that, hopefully we can come through this pilot project and have great news at the end that oysters can survive here. We just need to get the population jump started again.
And then will these oysters then be placed in a location so that they'll stay here in Brevard County?
Yes.
And will continue being hatchery where it eventually replenish our wild stock?
Yep.
Are the hatchery where it does the same
oyster, which is Cressophtheria virginica. However, it's kind of funny, when we originally started this, we were thinking, oh, let's take some of our Volusia County oysters and bring them down here. There's actually this grade right there at the line between Volusia and Brevard County, and it's a different genetic population. So we have to leave the ones that are up there, and then the ones that we're getting from Florida Oceanographic, they're actually going out and getting brood stock, which is getting the males and the females and getting the gametes from them, making the babies out of oysters that are local from here. So we're actually using local oysters to put local oysters back in, rather than, I mean, I know they're coming from Stewart because that's basically like the little factory for them, but then their genetics are from here. So that's, yeah, it's really important to not be mixing genes around like that.
At the risk of sounding like a moron, I'm sorry if I do.
No.
But, I assume the reason they're called bay scallops, the reason bay scallops are called bay scallops is because they only live in the bay, and therefore,
I don't know very much about scallops, but I can tell you that the word bay is actually interchangeable with the word estuary, which is interchangeable with a lagoon, which is interchangeable with a lot of other words. So yeah, I mean, I don't know too much about
regardless,
scallops.
they're not a native species down here, right?
Not as far as I'm aware, no. Yeah.
How do you explain water to the oysters about?
Our oysters here in Volusia County are intertidal, so they'll actually spend quite a bit of their time out, which is actually really great for them. People don't realize, but it helps them to escape predation. So if they're out of the water for a couple hours at a time, they're not constantly getting picked at by the sheep's head and all the little blue crabs and things that want to come and snack on them. So they'll be out of water as the tide goes out for a few hours and then go back under. There's many oysters that are subtidal, stay underwater all the time, and they're fine like that as well. So it was kind of funny that you asked that, because we just did our spat distribution, and we had all of our little babies out of the water all day, and you should have seen me. I was like this psycho mother, like trying to hurry up, guys, we got to get it back in the water. And I was like, fine. And I know they're fine for a couple hours, but we picked them up at 7 a.m. and didn't get it back into the water until about 7 p.m. They'd already had a rough day. They got picked up from the hatchery. They're little bitty babies. We brought them up here. They're giving them to new homes, but we got them back in the water, and they're all doing fine. So yeah, thankfully they're hardy. Yeah. Oh, I hope so. I can only work at this pace for so long. Ideally, yes. That is the plan. That is the goal. So I hope so. And I hope, I really don't know. I mean, I'd like to think that if we can get a couple hubs, which are healthy places where they can kind of spread, and then I'm going to do like these beachheads. So if we have, every couple miles or however far apart locations that they can kind of build off of each other, maybe 10, 15 years. Yeah. Unfortunately, they're not like clams, which can find each other and have babies across the lagoon. They don't work that way. They've both got to be within, fairly close quarters for the gametes to join to make the babies. So, good questions, guys. Thank you. Thanks for listening to me be crazy. Yeah.
In areas where there's a bunch of healthy oysters, is the water clear than in other areas?
Oh, absolutely. If you guys get a chance, go to Mosquito Lagoon. The place will blow your mind. It's gorgeous up there. Go kayaking, go paddleboarding up there. Yeah, it's not like this crystal clear Keys kind of thing. And you'll notice with the lagoon, one day it will be clear, the next day it won't be, the next day it will be again. So, it kind of depends on how much stuff's getting pushed around. But yeah, definitely see more clear water rather than a healthy oyster base.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Love to hear from you.